All right, good Saturday morning, everybody. My name is John Newman from Sports Card Nation. It's time for another episode of Hobby Hotline, episode 286 to be exact. We've got some great topics to tackle, but we also have some great hosts on today's episode. I'll just go in order from top to bottom. We'll start with Horatio Ruiz. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it. Just love being on the show every month, and looking forward to getting into some good conversation.
All right. Well, we the feelings mutual. So, and a veteran, even in his young age, I don't call him Brody the kid anymore. He's not a kid. He's taller than me now, which probably beat me up too. Not that we want that to happen, but Brody TK. Good morning.
What's up, John? I'd never beat you up. It's Royal Rumble Saturday and Championship weekend, so I'm pretty excited. It's going to be a good weekend.
Yeah, we did not plan that segue, by the way. That just kind of worked out on its own. But all right, guys, let's get let's get into the first topic. I'm going to put this on the screen here. The Donruss Victor Wembanyama rookie card, as you see, with a big no autograph designation on the front. Brody, you brought this kind of to when we were discussing topics for this week. You brought this one to the table. I know about it, but you brought it up. You know, I believe this is a case hit too, so this is not going to be like an easy card necessarily to pull. But what I mean, thoughts on it? This big bold no autograph on it. Obviously, anyone looking at the card knows there's no autograph on it. You don't need that there to determine that. I'll start with Brody because you brought this to the table. Your thoughts here? Why do you think they did this? Do you like the design? Just kind of your overall when you saw this and found out about this.
Well, people love Donruss next days because there's the on-card autographs, and obviously they don't have Victor Wembanyama to sign. So I think to do a next day with no autograph would be smart, but just why write no autograph in these giant letters? Like it just seems now we make the card ugly. Like who wants this card now because you wrote no autograph? Like I don't know. It just seems weird to me. And like who thought of this idea? Let's like at Panini it was like let's write no autograph on the card. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think, and I'll get Horatio in here too. I think it's sort of you know, an indirect shot back at Fanatics, right? Thanks for not allowing us to have Wembyana autos in our product with the exclusive signing. I like Bamboo. I got to put this on. Bob Boozle said Donner should have used thanks Fanatics instead of no autograph. Fanatics probably would have liked that because it would have been free advertising for them. I would have got a chuckle out of it personally had they done something like that. I'm sure they do that. It'd probably be another lawsuit as well. But we need another one of those. But I want to get Horatio kind of chime in here. Your thoughts on something like this?
Yeah, at first I thought it was like sort of like a take that to Fanatics from Panini, you know. But this is not an original thought I saw on Twitter. And I want to credit Suze Yanks chick on Twitter.
Yep.
She brought up a good point. She said that it's possible that the cards had already been printed a long time ago. Maybe at the time that he got drafted around there when they did their media days, and they probably figured that rather than destroy them or have the possibility of them being stolen, or as they awaited maybe some autographs, or they weren't sure what was going to happen with the autograph deal, that they could just put no autograph on them. That way, there's no forgeries, and that way they can make use of the product as well. Which makes a lot of sense. The problem is that the cards are ugly. It says no autograph on it. I mean, I don't know. To me, it's not a collectible thing, and I know it's a case hit, but I mean, with the amount of production that's being done, I don't know how rare they really are. So that's kind of my take on it. And I don't know what the long term is. Once the Wemby autographs actually do come out, What's a card that says no autograph going to be worth long term? I don't think it's going to be that much. Maybe in 3-4 years we can probably get them for $30-$40.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, the lifespan of this card, where it goes, even value wise, how in demand it is. Rich Klein, our very own co-host, has a comment here. This has been done before with the no autograph rotation in some football sets. It tells you that the card is not signed and frankly better for the customer. And I think they put that there so someone can't fake sign it and then pose it as a real Wemby auto. But I mean, like Brody said, I think it's aesthetically, it makes the card uglier, in my opinion. I mean, someone else might disagree. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Let's get to some good mornings and comments. And good morning, Hodges, Mark Hoyle, Jeff Eklund, Chris Ramsey, Dr. Meyer, Sue Tim Wong, Mad City Brew. I'm going quick here, guys. Foul five ball, defects of life, and I'll put his comment. Looks like an old promo card, yeah, from back in the day. Mike Petty, good morning. He says, I'm selling some fake stickers with up and down scribble on them. You can stick on before grading. You can barely read VWEM. They were likely be 1-1 at PSA. You gotta like Mike Petty's humor. Always get a chuckle with him, but. Stephen Myers says maybe it will become popular, like the FF Ripken we all know here 34 years later. Now, Brody, you brought this up? I did a little research. Am I correct in that this is a case hit?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. The next days are case hits, but the Wemby isn't the only one that has not auto. There's also Grady Dick has one that's non auto, and there might even be more. Those are the only two I've seen, but there might be more.
Yeah, to me, the value, if it is a case hit, which apparently it is, I think the value is going to come from the scarcity of the card itself. That thing could say, Panini is the best on the front of it. I think the value, or what people probably will pay, like a lot of low numbered or scarcity cards, is going to be on that basis, right? That there's just not as many of these as other cards. So I think that's where we're going to see what this card goes for. Do you know, have these hit have there been any reported sales, Brody, or you're not sure?
I'm not sure. I think the product just came out either yesterday or Wednesday, so it's a pretty new product, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. Listen, he's playing great. He's most likely going to win NBA Rookie of the Year. So in that sense, the card's going to be in demand. You add in the fact that it's a case hit as well. That's going to probably drive the price up. But the Wemby autos, those are going to go up as well. And if you ask me, would I rather have a Wemby auto or a card that says no autograph, even though it's a case hit, low print run, all that juicy stuff? I'll still probably take a Wemby auto just for he's having a great rookie year. He's looking, bar an injury or something else terrible. Looks like he's going to be a perennial all-star, potential Hall of Famer, and so I think the no autograph aesthetically, I don't like it. But I wouldn't throw it out of bed, as I like to say. So, any kind of final thoughts here?
No, I just think I like how the one thing that I do like about the card is that it marks sort of a time in our hobby, right? Of transition. So it's almost like a marker, or even a milestone, you could say, where it's transitioning from Panini to Fanatics, and that you could really see the impact of that on this product, right? And who could be a generational player? Wemby is by all means, I mean, he's having a spectacular year. He's living up to his promise. So it's almost like I don't know. I mean, different eras and everything, but let's say a guy is hyped up as, say, LeBron, right? If he had a card that also had a no autograph on it, right? And the hobby might have at that time, say 20 years ago, would have been like, what is going on here? But for us, it's normalized. We understand what's going on behind the scenes, right? So I find that's the most interesting part of this card.
Yeah, no doubt. And listen, Wembanyama cards, they could make him in a cartoon form. He could be pictured with a cat holding a cat, whatever the case may be. Just the fact that he's on it is going to be in demand, like you said, Horatio. Playing well, most likely rookie of the year, barring something happening between now and the end of the season. And it's going to be interesting. Great point by you too, as this transition. Slowly or slower than Fanatics would like it to happen, as they try to kind of force the issue. But eventually, Fanatics / Tops are going to be in the basketball card business 100% with the NBA again, and we won't see on Fanatics side of the house, we won't see no autograph Wembys where it says no autograph. We'll have regular Wembys, but they won't have to say no autograph. And again, just kind of to wrap it up too, good point by Horatio with Sue's, saying like a lot of times they print these ahead of time with the anticipation of maybe them being signed, and then it happens, and then they have to do sort of a 180. So we'll see where the market goes. We'll see if Donruss has any other Wemby's surprises before that licensing, changes hands. So another big topic for the week, guys, is the Hall of Fame voting. So you see these three gentlemen. Congrats to them: Adrian Beltre, Todd Helton, and I believe it was Todd Helton's last year on the regular ballot, other than the Veterans Committee. And Joe Mauer on the first year of his ballot, and I'm going to talk about, I have some strong opinions there, as probably with my chuckle you could probably tell. Also not pictured, Jim Leland got in as well, famous manager, World Series winner as a manager. And, to me, Adrian Beltre was a first ballot, no-brainer Hall of Famer. That's no surprise to me. 500 homers, Gold Glove, kind of good teammate. No one had much negative to say. Todd Helton, same thing. I mean, arguably, not negative as personal. All these guys, for that matter. For me, guys, and then I'll get your take. Joe Mauer was a very good player. He had 3 really great years as a catcher, and then he kind of transitioned, not playing catcher anymore, a little outfield, if my memory serves me right, first base. DH when DH was in play. And when you look at his numbers, those 3 years were Hall of Fame type years, but the rest of the whole body of work to me really didn't scream, Hall of Fame. He didn't play catcher his whole career, like a lot of catchers don't. I don't want to kind of pick on him for that, but 163 homers. He fell short of 1,000 ribbies. He did hit for average. I mean, he was a great pure hitter, especially from the catching position. I think 302 was his lifetime batting average. I think he's very good. And I think for me, as a Thurman Munson kid, I'm like, if Joe Mauer gets in, like Thurman Munson, now this should reopen the door for guys like me who believe Thurman Munson should be in. And other things. And that's what happens is when I've heard even people say Todd Helton sort of was a compiler, played a long time. I heard arguments people don't want him in, and you're always going to get these. But the Mauer one was a little, and especially on the first ballot, I for sure didn't think he was going to be a first ballot guy. But I don't know who wants to go, Horatio, Brody first, but kind of your thoughts on this year's class.
Brody, go ahead and take it.
Yeah, I thought Beltre. Yeah, I agree. Beltre, yeah, for sure, first ballot, and I agree. Helton, great player. He put up the numbers, but I think I agree with you. Mauer, he had those great years, and then he was a good player for the rest of his career. I think he's a Hall of Famer, but it surprised me that he was a first ballot. That surprised me. Like I thought he'd get like 60, 65%, then maybe we see him like third year as ballot. But first year, that kind of surprised me. I was pretty surprised that Sheffield didn't get in, and I was really surprised that Billy Wagner didn't get in because when I looked at his numbers, like I know that they don't do relievers and closers very well, but Billy Wagner had one bad season over a really long career. I thought Wagner would get in.
Yeah, I thought so too on Wagner. As a matter of fact, I watch a lot of Major League Baseball Network. They had him on. They were almost talking as if they knew like he was getting in this year. I even a couple like almost like pre-congratulations. It obviously didn't happen. So unfortunately for Billy, but there's always Veterans Committee and that sort of thing.
Well, he's
I
still
think
got
as
one
a
more
club.
year though.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe next year's the year. Although next year you got Ichiro, who's going to be a first ballot, deservingly Hall of Famer, and we'll see how that plays out. I think Wagner eventually gets in. I think when you look at his numbers, two closers who are already in there, he's in that mix. So I think it's inevitable. It just didn't happen this year. Horatio, your thoughts on this year's class?
So my thoughts are Beltre. I remember him from his Seattle years, and he had a 3-4 year run where he was a beast. I mean, the guy put up some historic numbers up there for a third baseman, and then over time you realize that the guy was going to get 3,000 hits. So he's a no doubt first ballot Hall of Famer. Great defender as well. Underrated defender on top of his offensive production. So Beltre, great choice. Todd Helton, I felt like he got maybe I want to say he got penalized for playing at Coors, but I think that the Hall of Fame voters came over that. And then once Larry Walker got inducted, I think it was a matter of time for Todd Helton. They put up kind of similar monster numbers at Coors, but Helton was also just another good fielder. He put up some monster numbers. I know they're a little bit skewed towards his towards Coors Field, but the guy has the numbers to put up with it. Just about anybody in the Hall of Fame. Sort of in that mid range Hall of Famer. Mauer, I was surprised. Like Brody said, that he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. Should that matter? I mean, does it matter if he's a first, second, third, or 10th ballot Hall of Famer like Helton is? I don't think so. But the thing is, you come to realize that. So Mauer had kind of a short career, like 1,800 at bats, which is not a short career, but relatively speaking, for some other catchers, it is. And he only had half of those at bats as a catcher. The other half were as a first baseman or a DH. So that's where he put up those numbers. So he put up basically, half of his career not behind the plate. So you can't think of him as a traditional catcher. And it's surprising when you look at his wins above replacement, they're way above guys that I think are superior catchers. But he's got like a career WAR that's way higher than Posey's, way higher than Sally Perez, and Yadier Molina as well. So it's his bat was a weapon, But in terms of like a pure catcher, Mauer had his, like you said, his peak. But when I think of a catcher, Hall of Fame catchers, I'm taking Posey, Perez, and Molina, and I don't know why that is. Even though I know how dangerous Mauer was, and maybe it's because he had like some injuries there in between. But the guy for sure is a Hall of Fame choice, a good Hall of Fame choice. And you mentioned to me before also Jim Leyland. So shout out to Jim Leyland. Won the World Series with the Marlins, won a World Series, correct me if I'm wrong, with the Tigers as well. Had a terrific run with the Pirates. There's that video of him not taking any crap from Barry Bonds, and just old school manager, love it. And I was actually there at the game 7. I remember you and I used to talk about Orestes Estrada. John, we had a conversation. So I was at the game 7 where the Marlins won their first World Series at old Joe Robbie Stadium. And Jim Leyland was a big part of that. He brought some actual like credibility to the Marlins organization. And I think he was a big reason why they won that World Series against the Indians in game 7.
Yeah, no doubt. Jim Leyland's deserving. I know he's sort of unorthodox, and some people don't like his bedside manner, what have you. We can do a whole show on a whole bunch of guys like that. But with the amount of wins he's had, the World Series titles, I think his body of work speaks for himself. Well deserved. For him, I watched a video when he got the phone call, and he's not a guy. He showed a lot of like anger emotion, but to see him sort of get choked up was not something you always saw from him. So you knew what it meant to him to finally get that probably final accolade in his career. He doesn't manage anymore, and so this will be the cherry on top of a great managerial career. He did play, not known for much of a player. Obviously, made his bones on the managing side of the house. Some great comments here. I want to get to guys too before we too fall behind on those. Do Fix a Life said Joe DiMaggio got in on his third ballot. Apparently, Joe Mauer is more deserving. That's my thing. I think the first ballot stuff, I think that sort of hurts when someone you feel like is sort of borderline and they get in on the first ballot. And it's not Joe Mauer's fault. Like, we're not picking on Joe Mauer. Like, personally, everything I read and know about him or hear about him, he's a wonderful person. But, I just did not see it as the first ballot. I think he got somewhere like close to 80%. Don't quote me. We have to look it up. But he had a high percentage. That was what really surprised me too. I kind of agree with this comment from Mike Petty. Letting nice guys in has cheapened the Hall of Fame. I almost want all the juicers and cheaters. I agree kind of with like half of that, the first half of that. I think what's becoming like a little bit of Hall of Nice guys, like if they're very good players and really excellent people, we're starting to put those guys in. I'm not necessarily liking putting all the cheaters in, but that line's blurred too with who was juicing, who wasn't. Mike Piazza's in. He's been rumored to have used. I'm a Mike Piazza guy. I hope he didn't. So we'll see. Alan Fars, I've always enjoyed the fun moments for King Felix and Adrian Beltre had on the field, being the good friends they are. Mookie Chilson, good morning, Mookie. Beltre equal no-brainer. Helton and Mauer equal brainers. I kind of agree. The Mauer one, I'm a little more feel strongly against than the Helton. Helton, this is from Mike Petty as well. Helton hit 285 on the road and played in the banjo box. There's that Coors Field effect you mentioned, Horatio. Solid hitter, no homers. Mauer, no homers, caught less games than Munson. And that's the thing. This is what happens, guys, is when certain people get in, like a Mauer, then we can start to go back and say, well, if he's in, this guy's got to be in. Munson being at the top of that list on the catching. And a great point, too, Horatio. Mauer, didn't – I think he caught, like you said, about half of his career. And we were spoiled with some great catchers back in the day, right? The Benches and the Berrers and the Campanellas, and again, it was a different time period. But those guys caught most of their career. And I think – whether someone say, well, the game's different now, John. We've got like load management and we're trying to like extend players' careers. Careers were shorter back then, especially for catchers potentially. I guess maybe it puts those post-war Hall of Fame catchers in a better light, or more Iron Men on their part. But to me, like a modern day catcher, you gotta, if you're getting in kind of on the catcher accolades or the hanging your hat on that peg, I think you gotta play more than 50% of your games at catcher. That's really. I'm not saying Joe Mauer's terrible, guys in chat room and those watching. I'm not saying that. Believe me, I've played fantasy leagues since they started. He was always a guy I sort of targeted at the catcher position. But the first ballot, the high percentage of the votes really caught me off guard. Let's see what else we got. Philly Joe, I pay attention, but no longer really have no feelings in the Hall of Fame. Congrats. Yeah, some people, get into it a little bit more than others. Another comment from Dufex of Life. Cooperstown seems afraid to have a year without any inductees now. Too much of a financial hit. Yeah, that's always – I'm sure that's always a concern. I live close to Cooperstown, guys. I can tell you, induction weekend It's just a busy time and a financial windfall for a small town in upstate New York. So,
Here's
and
yep.
yeah, Orlando, who I respect, he knows his baseball. He's a baseball historian. I'll go as far to call him that. And he says Mauer should not be in. Doesn't mince word, and Munson was better. And I agree. I do agree. And so it'll be interesting to see if Mauer gets in, sort of opens up the candidacy for a Munson, and maybe even other guys, that are in, that were literally on the bubble. And that's the risk, right? I remember when Rizzuto got in, and the argument was, if he didn't play for the Yankees, we wouldn't be talking about him as Hall of Famer. Now we've seen some other shortstops sort of follow him that were sort of on that bubble. I think sometimes when that bar, and I hate to say it like this, when the bar gets lowered a little bit, then that opens the door for, I've heard other people say if you have to even debate a player, they shouldn't be in. I won't go that far, but when certain people get in, it does sort of open the door to kind of revisit other people's candidacy. In Mauer's case, I think Munson fans and Munson advocates definitely have more ammunition now to go to the bargaining table and say this guy needs to be in the Hall of Fame. So
I still think that despite that, right? Despite like Mauer being sort of, this guy that's kind of, is he in, is he not? He's probably the most collectible one out of the three. Between Beltre, Helton, and Mauer, I think Mauer carries the biggest cachet among collectors. And I'm not sure why. Maybe, again, it could be the nice guy thing. Beltre was a very entertaining player as well. Nobody could say anything bad about any of them, but Mauer kind of had that, the media loved him, right? And deservingly so. Like, he is by all accounts, he is a good guy, a nice guy, good with the fans, good with the media. So I feel like Mauer, despite that, has the most like collecting cachet. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But.
He's a hometown kid. Yeah.
A couple other comments, and then we'll get to our next topic. I don't agree with this from Bob Boozle. Nothing personally. He says all MVPs should get in the Hall of Fame. I don't agree with that, because we all know, right? Every once in a while, someone who doesn't have a great career but has a great season wins an MVP. I don't think that should get you in. I don't care if Cooperstown wants to put a plaque and every year they list the AL and NL MVPs. I'm okay with that. But as far as a Hall of Fame plaque, I don't think so. Do Fix It Life, again, some great comments coming from him. Why isn't Manley in, right? That's the argument now I'm hearing, and is with Helton in. Again, this is, with Mauer in, we look at Munson. Now with Helton in, we got to revisit Mattingly. In Mauer's category, this is a good point by Alan Forrest. Mauer's the only catcher to win batting titles, which is impressive. I just wish, like you said, Horatio, I wished he caught longer. Like his numbers, under 1,000 ribbies. His batting average is tremendous. Obviously, he won batting titles, over 300 lifetime hitter. Under the 1,000 ribbies, did steal some bags, especially early in his career. I wish, like you said, he had more of a catching resume. It would be easier for me to swallow. Doesn't matter what I want to swallow his Hall of Fame, entrance. He's in, but I would have been less, like, hey, what are we doing here? Had he played more catcher. So, I see a lot of Munson comments, and we'll see. We'll see if that gets the groundswell up, and maybe Munson gets in on the veteran committee. And I was a Munson kid. I've told the story on Sports Card Nation. That's how I found out what death was when he died in that plane crash. I had no idea the finality of life until that day, and talking to my grandfather. And if that day comes when Munson gets in the hall, obviously his family will be there to represent him and induct him. And I'm going to, it's a 70-minute drive for me, and I'll be making that drive for that day as for what he meant to me as a young baseball fan in Brooklyn, New York. So, and I hope I get the opportunity to do that, and that he gets in. And I guess I'll be a little bit less against the Mauer first ballot if it leads to, in a selfish sort of way, if it leads to opening the door for Munson. So, and some great comments, right? Other guys that should be in: Ken Boyer, Kurt Flood. Especially on the contribution side, Kurt Flood with opening up what we now know as free agency, which was not common as it then. As we know it today. So one last comment here, and then we'll move on. Glad Jim L made the Hall of Fame. Could have had a third World Series appearance if Barry POS Bonds would have thrown out Sid without a good knee, bring him out at home plate. Yeah, classic play, and always like seeing that on the highlights. So, all right, guys, and again, I see some Harold Baines stuff. Harold Baines is not a Hall of Famer in my
Hey,
book.
don't talk bad about my White Sox.
Well, Brody, I'm not a Harold. Like, Harold Baines was very good, but he, again, a lot at the DH position, right? A lot at the DH position where he wasn't doing it on both sides of the ball, as they say, or playing defense. So, and again, it's not a personal thing. Again, Harold Burns might be the greatest human being in the world for all we know. But, that's, it's the Hall of Fame. It's not, to me, it's not the Hall of Very Good. But you can't take him out. So I can say what I want, Brody. Your guy's still in there. So you got that much, right? And we could do 2 hours of a Hall of Fame show, but I think we'll go on to our next topic, which I know is going to move the meter for some here, guys. And so let me put this graphic on the screen. Card restoration. We're seeing, this is not a new phenomenon. Well, it's sort of become more of a hot button topic recently. We see the Mr. Minty kit there that you can buy, Kurt's Card Care. There's others too. These aren't the only two that are in this niche part of the industry. They're probably the two biggest. They're the most talked about. So I used this graphic. I'm sort of old school when it comes to this. I don't believe in like rolling your cards out to get creases or using chemicals to take off writing or blemishes. I believe I don't have a problem, as someone who bulk subs for SGC and grades with PSA and SGC. I'll use a microfiber cloth on a chrome card and that sort of thing, or even a regular card to maybe get a fingerprint or even a surface scratched out. I just don't like adding chemicals. I think that, I've heard people use the art world comparison. Well, they restore, famous works of art to make them as close to the original. Why can't we do that with cards? I don't think that comparison is fair or accurate. That's my opinion. We'll start with Horatio. Kind of your thoughts on card restoration, / altering, if you go that far.
I think the biggest issue is honesty, right? And what I mean by that is, man, like if you want to restore cards, for your personal collection, you want to kind of smooth out wrinkles, you want to take out stains, by all means, you go ahead and do it, right? Like you should be able to do that. They're your cards. With the caveat, right, that when it's time for you to move those cards, that's disclosed. And regardless of whether, it adds value, takes away value, I don't know. That's up for debate, right? But like you have to disclose that. And I think that the problem is that the majority of resellers, right? And I'm not talking about wiping down a card. I'm not talking about maybe fixing a scratch even. I'm talking about soaking the card in and kind of leaving it there and smoothing out the wrinkles and taking out stains and certain, taking out dents and stuff like that. You have to disclose that to the buyer. And I think that the majority of people that are reselling the cards don't, because they want to make more money. And in fact, like if they do disclose that, they might lose money, right? So that's where it is. And it's really like sort of like this existential question within the hobby, like who are you dealing with, right? And so like a guy might be very friendly to you, smile to you, smile in your face, tell you, hey, look at my cards, they're in such good shape. And he's not disclosing the truth to you, right? He's not being completely honest with you. And you as a consumer would appreciate that. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you're okay with buying, restored cards that have been cleaned. But maybe you do. And so you have the right as a buyer to know that. And if the seller's not disclosing that, then it's not ethical. And so that's where I stand. I mean, I've spoken to Kurt from Kurt's Card Care. I think that he's a great entrepreneur. I think he's doing, what he wants, he's got a niche in the hobby. And I don't think that he's like this horrible guy or anything like that. And, I think he's actually a really good guy. But he's definitely not liked by some people in the hobby. And that's the case. I think it comes down to the people using the products and how much they're willing to disclose. And that's where we kind of, as a hobby and as people that come together in a community, like we have to be honest with each other, and not just look out for our, best interests financially.
A lot of the comments, Horatio, kind of back what you said. The disclosure is like big, huge. If someone says, "Hey, this was done," like that they would sign off on it. I think when it's done and it's not known, I think that's again, using that art world comparison, it's known that that's been restored. It's not a secret. It's widely known, and people are okay with it. This is not necessarily the greatest analogy. Let me preface that. I still play men's competitive softball, but in my younger years, I played a lot more and traveled to states. And the big thing back then was rolling what was called, those who are softball players will know what I'm talking about, rolling a bat, putting a bat like in a vise and thinning out the wall of the bat to get more pop off the bat. You hit more home runs, get more distance on balls that you put in play. It was illegal. Umpires tried to check bats to find them and make sure they weren't used and taken out of play, but they did sneak by. It's something I never did. I usually use my own bats. I don't want to say I never unknowingly use someone else's bat, and they did that to their bat. But again, that was frowned upon and illegal. And I can't say, hey, we can't compare the art world to the card world and then say, hey, we should compare softball bats. But I'm just using that as an example of, we're not talking about restoring these cards so that the ball travels further. The ball traveling further equivalent is they bring more money on auction and sales. And that's where that disclosure comes in. Brody, kind of your thoughts. What can you take and what's like a no-no in your book?
You just go back to the major league scene, give me some of that jalapeno stuff. You got to get anything to get a little bit more break on that ball. I don't know. I mean, the picture on the left looks like it's my next shaving kit. I don't know. Like, it just seems like a little too far. Like, I'm starting to learn in chemistry, like how you mix stuff. And if you add anything, if you add chemicals, you write it down. And that's where I think you guys mentioned honesty is the best policy. And like I said, if you mix something, you write it down. So just be honest. Like, tell people, like, yeah, I did this. I don't know.
Yeah, you sort of hinted there, Brody, that we might see, you're doing chemistry right now. Might we see like a Brody's card care kit coming down the turnpike in the years to come?
I don't think so. But you never know. Who knows?
Yeah, and I've heard people now. Listen, PSA or I know SGC can encapsulate cards that will say like, give it the A designation. It'll say authentic, and then evidence of coloring, evidence of trimming, and those cards still sell. Obviously, at less of a premium than ones that get a numerical grade with no sort of designation. Like that. So there's still a market for altered cards. Obviously, the price comes down that. And again, that's because people know, hey, I'm buying a 1971 Topps Thurman Munson, that black bordered card, and someone took a black Sharpie and tried to make some white edges look like they're not white and showing some wear and tear, right? People will still buy that card, but they're going to obviously pay less than a card that's graded a 4, 5, 6 or higher that doesn't have Sharpie on it. So I think there's a market for both. But it's exactly what you said, Horatio. The rub is that it's noted that card has been altered. Like no one's buying it, not knowing it. Like if you're buying that A Munson evidence of coloring, you know that's what happened, and you're okay with it. I appeal is enough for me, and I get it at a discount price because of the designation. Some comments here, guys. And the other thing, it's not a card care kit, but Evan, not recently, but I think last year, Evan Mathis, former NFL player, did a whole video series showing how to trim a card to make the corners sharp again. So let's get to some comments here pertaining to this subject. There were some good ones. So Mr. Minty and Kurt's card care belong in the sports card Hall of Shame. So Bob Boozoo does not like that stuff. He's kind of like me. He needs to sell a trimming tool and call it Manscapes. That company already exists, and that's for shaving your face and other areas. Philly Joe says, I have no problem with people restoring cards. People just need to disclose it if the cards are moved. Good luck with that. And that's exactly what you were saying, Horatio. And that's the rub, right? People are, I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but most people probably, they don't have to say it, probably wouldn't, right? That's where those grading designations come in. Another great comment from Jason, Everyday Card Collector. Hot topic right now, and I really struggle with these card care kits being accepted as a hobby norm. Yeah, I'm old, guys. I'm 51. I've been in the hobby since 7. This is uncharted territory for me, and I never thought. Heck, I used to just throw my cards around, put rubber bands around them. Sacrilegious now, but as a 7 to 10-year-old kid, that's what you did, right? Mike Petty says it's just an accepted scam the way it is. PSA has opened the floodgates. It's fraud by the very definition. Kurt's hair care is next. I don't like men don't use products for your hair, for your cards, etc. I just don't like the chemicals onto a card, right? And here's the other thing, when we talk about new drugs, right? The FDA has to do a study before they kind of put their stamp. We don't know long term what these chemicals could potentially do. So right now they clean it up, right? So now you use a chemical on your card, you send it to grading, it gets a higher grade. The grader itself can't detect the chemical, and they give it a 10. It comes back. You put it in your, I got a PSA case behind me here with graded cards that sometimes, some light hits it, right? So now the light reacts with the chemical over years, and all of a sudden your card's green, right? Your 78 Eddie Murray rookie has got instead of that white borders, it's green all of a sudden over years. We don't know, you got a graded 9 or 10 card from the 70s, and then now it's a green bordered card because whatever chemical, and I'm not a chemist, although I was one of my favorite subjects in high school. But we don't know what eventually long term, right? We've seen Finest, right? Anyone that knows Finest from its early days, 93, after years, they start to turn green with exposure to light, right? There was a chemical used in the processing of those Finest cards, right? So what's to say some of these chemicals after years of exposure might not even be just light, it could be air. And I know inside a grading thing it's supposed to be airtight, but I'm sure it's not 100% foolproof. Some air probably does get in there through a seam or what have you. So it'll be interesting. These products are kind of new. It'll be interesting 5, 10, or even further down the line to see if anything like that potentially happens, and that would be crazy to think about. Kind of your thoughts on where I went there with chemical additives.
Yeah, but I think that definitely right. I know that Kurt says that that he's done it for a long time, and that he knows that the stuff that is in his kit won't change the color of the card no matter how many years it is. So
But here's the thing. I don't mean to cut you off, Horatio. I get what he's saying, right? But you know just as well as I do, and everyone else. These cards are all made with different stock materials, right? Some are chrome, different types of chrome, different types of foil, holographic foil, acetate cards are one of my favorites, right? Different stocks, right? Different thicknesses of card, different cardboard material. So unless you literally tested every known variety of cardstock and thickness and material, you really honestly can't say that with 100% certainty. You can just say, hey, what I've tested it on has been okay so far. But how long? How long has he done these, testing and experiment? What has he done? Like, he used them. Did he leave them out in the sun and see what like eventually had, like they would do in a lab, but just to see the effect, a petri dish in the sense with your cards, because unless you keep your cards in a box 100% of the time, and even then some light's going to get in at different times or another, the sun is going to have a reaction. So I get that's what he almost sort of has to say, and I'm sure he did check what he was doing out. I'm not calling him a 100% facetious, but you can't test it on everything. There's so many different, when we go back to vintage and pre-war and all that stuff, right? It's almost impossible to know what a chemical will do long term. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just kind of wanted to sort of make that counterpoint. But go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, those are good points. I think he's almost been doing it for 30 years. So I think what I'm trying to get at is not that the Kurt guarantee. It's that they get really good at what they're doing, and they have decades of experience. And I think that one thing that we need to look out for, for those of us that kind of want some more disclosure, is that we'd be shocked to find out how many cards are out there that have been altered or restored. And not just from Kurt, right? From various other people, various other parties. They've gotten really good at it. And so, who's to say that 10, 15, 20, 30, I don't know that. But when you've been doing it for as long as he has, they get good at it. And it's very hard for everyday kind of collector, even people that are in it every day, to really tell what's restored and what's not. Now, a novice, right? When you find these vintage cards that are like super white, like these white borders that, that doesn't look like paper should age the way that it does, it becomes very obvious that something has been done to the card. But when you got guys doing his kind of work, it becomes more difficult for us to figure that out. Now, man, I mean, he could just be setting himself up for lawsuits 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, I'm going to say that he's smart enough that he knows that won't happen, for better or worse. That's all. That's all I'm laying out there,
The other thing I want to add, I want to get to some comments, and then we'll get to our last topics. I've had people, obviously, on Sports Card Nation from the grading companies, SGC, PSA, other companies, and they've told me that they know, they're aware of this, and they're developing stuff on their end, technology-wise, different types of lights, LEDs, black, to try to start to detect these chemical additives. And with the goal that if they detect these chemical additives, they're going to designate that or reject a card, like not fit for grading or altered in the sense like a trim card. So it's sort of a chess game here, with adding chemicals, trimming, and the grading card companies themselves developing technologies to combat that. It reminds me of like the Treasury Department, right? With anti-counterfeiting techniques that were, so it's harder for counterfeiters to make fake money and pass it off as real bills. So look for that, right? These card grading companies are trying to do their diligence as well to stop that. So a couple comments, and then we'll kind of move on. Burton Leffingwell Jr. says disclosure not important. That's called unethical. I don't disagree, but if disclosure is important in the very least. I'm not saying it's right, but it's really where you start. And I've heard this argument from Foul Five Ball. Comics are restored and fixed. If I can't tell it has been restored, who cares? There are people who feel like that, Brody Horatio. Hey, listen, if someone did a good job and the eye appeal is there and it's a better looking card or specimen, I'm okay with that. What I don't know, right? It's the old what I don't know doesn't hurt me. That argument. So kind of what I said from Dufek saying adding chemicals can make a PSA 10 now. Well, what a PSA 5 10 years from now. And that it's funny, this comment, I want to leave this up. This was from someone in the grading industry I talked to. This is why they're trying to develop stuff to detect chemicals for this very point right here. They don't want to give out a 10 to a chemically altered card, then have it break down and deteriorate, and then it's a card that now no longer in 10 condition, but their name and brand is on it with a 10 designation. It makes them look bad too. So they're protecting their own integrity in their own interest. And that's why, someone might say, who cares if someone uses a chemical and the card looks great, the grader should just grade the card. This is why, because it's their name and designate. Listen, we see them take a beating, right? When we see a 10 in a slab and there's a ding corner, we see all those social media posts, like, how did this get a 10, right? Imagine you see a green chrome card 10 years from now that's got a PSA or an SGC or another grading card 10 on it, right? They're not going to be excited about that while they're taking a beating in social media, and deservedly so, right? So let me see, get a couple. Here we go. Orlando says, I have cards that were soaked from a scrapbook and glue stains come back after a few years. Yeah, like nothing is 100%. It's a good point by Orlando. And I guess at the end of the day, some people are more more accepting that, hey, I just want my card to look the best. If today, I'm not worried. I may not be here in 10 years. The card might be, and I'm gone. So, and to each their own, I guess. Rex from Sports Card Shop said, agree, John. That's the main reason we send all vintage cards to SGC. This way customers know exactly what they're getting. And then he correct all raw vintage above a certain value. So again, this is a hot button topic. We could have did a whole show on it. We could have did the hour today on this, guys. I don't want to do that. We're gonna finish with a story that Horatio brought to the table, and I don't have a graphic for this, guys, but Horatio sent me a link. It's I think the gentleman's name is Max Waxpack. He's on YouTube. You can search that and find it. He had sold a approximate value $9,000 Connor McDavid SP Future Watch Auto Rookie, I think numbered to 75. He sent it via UPS. It got lost in shipping somewhere. He did the normal thing, right? He called UPS, filed a report. They put a trace on it. It has a specific number. He had pictures. He had all that stuff. And they said, they would put out, in a sense, a bolo, be on the lookout for a trace. It never turned up. And he had to refund the buyer. I think he said $8,000 or $9,000 out of his pocket, because that's what the buyer paid. He had to reimburse the buyer, who didn't get their card, never made it to its final destination. So he had to refund them. Now he's out of that money and the card, in a sense, out of the card, because the money was what he got from the buyer. UPS could not find it supposedly, and there's a company, and there's more than one company here, guys. So I don't want it to be I'm picking on this one company that does this, but there's a company called NPS, National Product Services. They have an eBay store, and their claim to fame is they lost or unclaimed packages from shipping agencies like UPS. I don't think UPS is the only one. That might be their main supplier of these type of packages. And he searched this NPS store for offerings, and lo and behold, there's his Connor McDavid Future Watch with a like $4,400 price on it. He contacted them. I'm trying to make this as quick as possible. He contacted them, said, "Hey, this is my card. Here's all my my correspondence, my documentation with UPS," and found the lost claim. They lost it. They sent back a picture of the box it came in, and the name and address was cut out. Wasn't like wet. It was almost like done on purpose. To make a long story short, he had to jump through a lot of loopholes, threaten legal action, threaten getting lawyers involved. He did get his card back, but he made a video. He was incensed, very animated, and just said, "This could be happening to your stuff too." I've been fortunate, guys. I've sent a lot of and received, sometimes expensive cards. I've never had anything go missing. I've had PWE stuff, plain white envelope stuff, never arrived either to me, and I've had stuff that I've sent PWE go missing too. But if I'm sending or receiving that way, they're cards on a very low end of the scale. But we've heard kind of these stories before. And it's scary to think. And basically in this video, Max Waxpack was saying this was, in his opinion, this was all like UPS drivers know certain, what the card market is, and, the insured value, and they could potentially be making side deals to sell this. I don't know if it's as prevalent as he makes it sound, but I'm not saying it doesn't happen either. It's probably somewhere in the middle there, Horatio and Brody. But it makes me say now, like, if that ever happens, I'll probably go to this NPS store and see if I can track this missing card down. And it's scary to think, right, that this could potentially happen. Listen, there was a couple news stories in the calendar year of 2023 where a postal employee was arrested for stealing cards and opening those mail and taking the cards out and dumping the empty like mailer somewhere, and they found them, and they did all their investigation and made an arrest. Thankfully, but how many times does that maybe happen where person never gets caught, right? And that's the point of this. And so the one thing I will say for if you ship any kind of cards of significance or significant value, I won't mention brands, but there's collector's insurance. It's something I use, especially the last couple of years. I've really signed on to that, which covers you. I can do a whole show about, when you go to the post office and they say, "Hey, do you want to insure it?" Or you say, "Hey, I need to insure it." I've read stories where someone said, "Hey, I insured it for $1,000. It got lost, and now the post office is sort of fighting me on that it's not worth that much, and they want to give me $200." Right? That's where collectibles insurance comes in, because they cover the comp value of whatever you sent. So again, I'm not going to be an infomercial for that, but I will say this: if you do send anything of significance, having that to me is kind of crucial. Brody, I'll start with you, and then we'll go back to Rachel. Have you ever had anything go missing?
No, I've been fortunate. Pretty much everything that I've got has been good. But I agree with what you said, John. I would just be careful and do everything you can that it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and listen, as we know, with the COVID crescendo, the hobby's made financial network news. It's become mainstream now with celebrities involved. It's more of a mainstream thing. There's more attention on it. Carriers who are not ethical people potentially can take advantage of this. You brought this story to the table, Horatio. Kind of your thoughts on this whole thing.
My thoughts are that a lot of times these carriers maybe don't have not necessarily your best interest, but they're not going to go to the lengths that they should to protect you, and so you have to take those steps on your own. Like you mentioned collectible insurance, John. You can't just take their that they're going to do everything they can to find your package. In some cases, this guy Max Waxpacks thought that it was an inside job. That somebody at the facility cut out the label on purpose and then sold it, as a lost package. But the truth is that there was identifying information inside of the package. Like that was his main argument. Like if someone had just opened the package up, even if it didn't have, the mailing label, you would have seen that it came from me, right? Or that
Yeah,
it came from them.
great point. I forgot to
And,
mention that. Thank you.
yeah. And UPS, they couldn't even bother to open up the package and do that and contact, the person at that
Yeah.
address. And
And I
hey,
think that was his main point, Horatio. Is like it's okay if you don't know where it was going, but open the thing up and see where it came from and get it back to me. We can get it to the right person. And why didn't that occur? It's a head scratcher, right?
Yep. So he thinks that there's some sort of like, network, a scamming network with, not directly involving the higher ups at UPS, but that there's people that are, there's a system there. You have NPS that's in the market for lost lots. And so they have now, this buyer for their stolen goods, So I would just say
almost like a car chop shop. Cars getting stolen, taken to the chop shop, getting torn down, selling parts or repainting them, repainting the car, scratching out the VIN number. Right? It's almost like that. It's the hobby. If this is true and this is really what's going on, it's basically a not card, CARD chop shop in a sense. And that's it sounds crazy, but it's potentially a real thing, and it's sad that it's happening. But he made a lot of great points. I didn't really have time to post Max Whackpacks. It's on YouTube. Check it out. I'm actually going to try to have him on like a hobby quick hits episode and kind of talk about his experience and things like that. A couple comments, guys, as we kind of wind down. Dr. Stephen Meyer says, I would only sell a card that expensive in person. It's a great point. You hear a lot of that. You see ads like, I will personally deliver this card to any potential buyer. Our very own Logan Ward said, my local United States Postal Service lost a Grail card that was out for delivery from PSA. This was 4 years ago, and I still search for it every day. I remember this story, Logan. Thank you for it's not a good story, but thanks for reminding us that happened. Wish it didn't. From Bob Boozle, USPS has lost a handful of my packages, most under $20. Yeah, I've had PWE stuff never arrive to me or where I sent it to. They couldn't care less, and there's no accountability. And I'm not defending shipping companies, but they're shipping millions of packages, and stuff can legitimately go lost too. But it's still, if the onus is on them, right? You pay for a service to get your product or item to its final destination. They have a responsibility there, right? And then if there's tracking involved, it should be monitored and that stuff. So Rex, who I know does a lot of in-country shipping and even out-of-country shipping, says carrier insurances don't recognize market value for collectibles. They only pay the amount you can show a receipt for. It's virtually useless. This is the point I was making. Do not rely on UPS, FedEx, and USPS what you claim for insurance. They will fight it tooth and nail. They will try to pay the least they can. Like Rex just pointed out, they will ask for receipts, and that's if you don't have a receipt or any kind of documentation. And if you bought a card on eBay for $200 and it's now $2,000, they're going to want to pay you $200. Even if you sold it to the new buyer for $2,000, and they're gonna want to pay you $200. So that's the nature of and that's where that collectibles insurance definitely comes in, guys. And I hope it doesn't happen to anyone. I've been very blessed in terms of with expensive stuff. I do bulk subbing for SGC. That package I send is very valuable. That's where the collectibles insurance. And before, just things I do, just some real quick tips before we kind of wrap it up. If I'm sending 500 cards to SGC, I'm literally setting up a camera on a tripod, and I'm filming the cards I'm shipping, going through them and filming every card. It might be a 25-minute video to get through 500 cards. I'll add comments on certain cards, and I'll video the process of me packaging it up, labeling it, and that way, God forbid, the day ever comes a package gets lost, I have documentation of what was in it, and I can go to my insurance, my personal collectibles insurance, and say, this is now gone. And I hope I never have to do that. That's like any insurance, right? You never want to use it, but you need it when, God forbid, that day comes. And so, I hope that never happens to anybody, but we hear these stories, right? In our very old chat room, we've had people sharing that their stuff has never arrived, and they're never to be found again. Like Logan said, he's still on 4 years after the fact. He's trying to track that card down. So, any last kind of thoughts, guys, as we kind of wrap up here?
Go ahead, Brody.
Do everything you can, and I hope it stays safe, whatever you're shipping out. And in terms of this weekend, go Lions. I don't know why, but go Lions.
Yeah, listen, I'm my team's the Steelers, so we're done, obviously, and so I'm rooting for the Lions. I don't have a second favorite team, but a team that's never won an NFL Super Bowl has really haven't made the playoffs very much. I'm sort of rooting for the underdog. I don't have an interest with my team being gone, but yeah, I'll be an honorary Lions fan for the next few weeks if they make it. So yeah, go Lions. I don't disagree. Horatio, what do you got? Yeah, it would be. I'd like to see it. Horatio, what do you got going on?
Yeah, we're talking football. I'm looking forward to the Hall of Fame election for football, the induction.
Yeah,
I'm a big Miami Hurricane fan. So I'm hoping that Reggie Wayne, Andre Johnson, and Devin Hester get the call. 3 deserving candidates. So we talked about the baseball. So I'm looking forward to the Football Hall of Fame voting. It occurs in 2 weeks. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, we'll see how that shakes out. I'm sure just like any Hall of Fame induction, right? There's always people who say he shouldn't have got in or this guy should have got in and didn't, right? That's always fun to debate those things. And again, even when we debated earlier with the Joe Mauer stuff and Todd Helton stuff, like it's not a personal attack. It's just, looking at a body of work and, saying, hey, is that worthy of getting in? And we'll do that to the end of time. So thanks everybody out there. Awesome chat room, whether you're watching us live or you're listening to us on audio download. We appreciate you. We're live every Saturday with usually new hosts, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. And what time Central Time, Brody?
10 a.m.
There you go. All right, everyone. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.